some years has gone, and I have also done, after ABBA, I have done several solo records.
Today, the music world shook when Agnetha Fältskog, the luminous voice of ABBA, finally broke her silence and exposed Elvis Costello in a way that left fans stunned. For decades, whispers and rumors circled about the cold tension between the Swedish pop goddess and the British new wave-influenced songwriter. But now, the curtain has been lifted. What unfolded was not just a tale of rivalry, but of bitter words, clashing egos, broken trusts, and the darker side of Costello's chaotic life both on and off the stage. Think of the late 70s, ABBA reigning with shimmering pop perfection, while Elvis Costello rose from the London pubs with sharp, angry lyrics and a rebellious sneer. On paper, their worlds couldn't be more different. Yet, behind the scenes, they collided, fueled by press comparisons, backstage encounters, and personal digs that cut deep. Agnetha, who thrived in precision and discipline, found Costello's arrogance unbearable. He mocked pop as shallow, and in his disdain he dismissed her artistry. That sting never faded. Today, she revealed how those early wounds became a quiet feud that lasted for decades. Elvis Costello never limited his conflicts to one person. Picture smoky recording studios thick with resentment and press conferences where smiles cracked into snarls. He sparred with fellow musicians, attacked critics, and burned bridges with industry executives who once believed in his promise. His feud with Ray Charles, after a drunken slur in 1979, nearly destroyed his career, a single night of recklessness that left scars impossible to erase. He clashed bitterly with fellow new wave musicians like The Clash and The Jam, dismissing their ideals while they mocked his pretensions. Each insult was another stone added to a wall that separated him from allies and rivals alike. The pattern was always the same: initial respect followed by tension, ending in spectacular fallouts that made headlines. Costello was brilliant, yet his brilliance carried a blade. Agnetha's confession fits into a larger pattern. Costello, self-destructive as much as he was talented, seemed to thrive in conflict. For every friend he made, he forged two enemies. Where others sought harmony, he sought confrontation, leaving a trail of fractured relationships behind him like broken glass glittering in the dim light of his legacy. Away from the stage, Costello's private life was no less turbulent. Marriages strained under the weight of his temper and his long tours. His first wife, Mary Burgoyne, struggled to keep pace with his fame, and the collapse of that marriage left him haunted. The loneliness of hotel rooms and constant travel chipped away at their union until silence replaced affection. Their separation was not just a private heartbreak, but a wound that bled into his songwriting, fueling ballads that sounded tender but carried undertones of regret. Affairs with other artists fueled gossip columns, each liaison carrying whispers of betrayal and recklessness. Costello's reputation for restlessness in love matched his volatility in music: intense, passionate, but unable to last. His eventual high-profile relationship with Pogue's bassist Kate O'Riordan was marked by whispers of volatility and fights. Their union, often celebrated in the press, was behind closed doors filled with shouting matches, jealousies, and reconciliations that never lasted long. What appeared to fans as a rock and roll romance was in truth a struggle of two strong personalities clashing in private. Even friendships blurred into romances, and romances collapsed back into bitterness. Agnetha's revelation today pulls those scars into the light, suggesting that Costello's personal betrayals mirrored the cruelty he showed in his professional world. His inability to sustain harmony in love was another reflection of his tendency to push people away, to test bonds until they snapped, leaving behind more stories of sorrow than stability.
Yes, I think it has been like that because after the ABBA years, we were all very tired, and we just felt that we have to do something else now. It has been too much now.
While Costello thrived in chaos, Agnetha absorbed the cruelty silently. She was known for her quiet dignity, but she carried the sting of Costello's dismissals with her for years. Think of a star used to adoration, suddenly reduced to ridicule by a fellow artist. For a performer who had conquered global stages, his words cut sharper than any critic's pen. Her words today revealed that Costello's digs weren't harmless banter, but wounds that fed into her own struggles with anxiety, fear of the spotlight, and her eventual retreat from the music world. In interviews, she often spoke of stage fright and loneliness, but rarely revealed the triggers. Now it becomes clearer. The contempt of peers like Costello deepened her insecurities, turning applause into pressure and silence into refuge. Friends remembered how she would withdraw after award shows, choosing solitude over celebration. Behind the glamour of ABBA, she battled panic before stepping on stage, replaying cruel remarks in her mind. Costello's dismissals became ghosts she could not silence, echoes that haunted rehearsals and lingered in hotel rooms after the crowd dispersed. In her story, Costello is not just a rival, but a shadow in her memory, a ghost haunting her long after the applause faded, shaping the choices she made and the fears she carried well into her years away from the spotlight. Costello's family life often mirrored the turbulence of his public persona. His father, Ross McManus, a jazz trumpeter, pushed him into music, but also instilled a perfectionism that later twisted into self-loathing. Growing up in a household where expectations were high, Costello learned to mask his insecurities with sarcasm and wit. Those early lessons carried into adulthood, where the pressure to succeed often turned inward, leaving him restless and dissatisfied. As fame consumed him, the cracks widened at home. Cost. Ello himself admitted to being absent for his children during his early years of fame, consumed by the stage and the studio. The endless tours meant missed birthdays, forgotten promises, and a distance that no apology could mend. Friends close to the family recalled how his obsession with music often left his loved ones competing with guitars, microphones, and deadlines. His first marriage frayed under the weight of neglect, and later unions faced the same relentless pressure. Behind the fiery lyrics and sharp wit stood a man battling guilt and fractured bonds, a truth that made his conflicts with others all the more tragic. His inability to balance family and fame cast a shadow over his greatest triumphs, leaving a trail of regret in his wake. Agnetha's words brought this to the surface, reminding fans that behind every sneer stood a man at war with himself, torn between the applause of the crowd and the silence of an empty home. Throughout his career, scandals clung to Costello like shadows. The infamous drunken tirade in a Columbus, Ohio bar in 1979, when he insulted American icons in front of Bonnie Bramlett, nearly cost him everything. The backlash was fierce, and though he later apologized, the stigma lingered for years. It was more than one ugly night. It became a symbol of his tendency to explode when the bottle loosened his tongue. American audiences turned their backs, and even in Britain, whispers of his arrogance became harder to ignore. Later, accusations of arrogance, backstabbing collaborators, and abandoning projects reinforced his image as unreliable and volatile. Producers spoke of sessions cut short by anger, and fellow musicians complained of being used and discarded when Costello tired of them. His reputation for cutting ties without warning made him feared in the industry. Even journalists, once enchanted by his sharp wit, often found themselves as targets of his venom, with press conferences spiraling into bitter exchanges that fed the tabloids. Beyond the music press, scandals in his personal life became fuel for gossip columns. Affairs overlapping with professional work blurred lines and created jealousy among peers. At times, his words were sharper than any lyric, leaving relationships in ashes. These weren't isolated stumbles, they were patterns, woven into the fabric of his career and private existence. And today, Agnetha's revelation painted him as someone who thrived in the storm of scandal, even if it left others broken in its wake. To her, Costello wasn't just a rival with a biting tongue. He was a man who wore controversy like a second skin, unable or unwilling to step out of the shadow of his own chaos. The rivalry between Agnetha and Costello was more than just personal dislike. It symbolized the larger clash between two musical worlds, pop's golden sheen versus punk's sharp rebellion. For fans, the revelation today tied together threads of history, why these two figures never collaborated, why their paths diverged so violently. It was not chance. It was animosity simmering beneath the surface for decades. Think of the late 70s music press, always hungry for drama, stoking the fire by setting ABBA's polished perfection against the jagged edges of new wave. Journalists delighted in framing Agnetha as the angel of melody and Costello as the snarling prophet of discontent. Behind the curtain, that narrative festered into genuine hostility. Every snub backstage, every sarcastic jab in interviews, every rumor passed around smoky bars only deepened the resentment. Their rivalry stretched across continents. ABBA dazzling stadiums with sequins and harmonies, while Costello slashed through tiny clubs with words sharp enough to wound. Agnetha, tired of his dismissals, withdrew into silence, while Costello wore his contempt like a badge. Each became a symbol for an audience that chose sides, pop escapism or punk defiance. Agnetha's exposure today gives voice to a feud that shaped their careers in ways most fans never realized, not only coloring their public images, but leaving scars that influenced the choices they made for decades after those first cutting encounters. Itoos. In the end, Agnetha's revelation is not just about her pain. It is a reminder that Elvis Costello, for all his genius, carried a storm within him that left destruction in its path. Rivalries, love feuds, scandals, family struggles. His story is one of brilliance tainted by bitterness. Picture this, a man who could write timeless songs of love and heartbreak, yet in real life could not escape the chaos of his own making. His biting tongue and impulsive rages made him as feared as he was admired. Colleagues never knew whether they would meet the lyrical poet or the merciless critic, and friends often became enemies overnight. The world applauded his art, but those closest to him felt the toll of his reckless choices. And today, through Agnetha's voice, the world is reminded that behind the music lies a darker, more complicated truth that will forever shadow Elvis Costello's legacy. It is a legacy written not only in brilliant records, but also in broken bonds, missed chances, and an endless trail of disputes that defined the man as much as his songs.